If you're watching this on Patreon, it's going to be the last video of 2024. If you're watching a few days later on YouTube, it's going to be the first video of 2025. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for all the support that you've shown me over the last year or so. It really does mean a lot. It's been quite overwhelming. The amount the channel has grown in that time has been fantastic, and I couldn't have done it without all of you. So thank you ever so much, and hope everyone has a fantastic year to come. Now, just going to paint a very simple scene, no tricks or gimmicks or anything like that. I'm just going to paint a nice warm sunset, one of my favourite subjects, Norfolk type scene with some boats and plenty of light, plenty of drama, really dramatic sky, little church off in the distance, and some nice reflections on the water. So starting with a very simple pencil drawing, really just marking out the horizon and a few main little points, and so keeping it very basic at this stage. And now I'll bring a graded wash over the whole sheet, so I'd just like to get a little bit of water on there to start with, so use the mist bottle and get a little bit of dampness on the paper so the paint moves around. And I'll pick up some ultramarine, some cobalt blue, and now get that quite wet, and I can lay it straight in using a large sable brush, very soft brush. And I'll get some cerulean in there as well, I think. Get some nice bright blue, and allowing it all to mix on the paper. It can be very loose. And I'll grab some raw sienna. I'll just touch that with a little bit of alizarin. So a nice soft orange, and I can bring that across as well. Again, very loosely, allow that to touch the blue. Now I'll get some real vibrant colour in there now, so picked up some Indian yellow and I've mixed that in. And put some raw sienna in there as well, tone it down a little bit. And I can lay that in, I can bring it all the way across, bring it down below the horizon, drag some of it up into that blue area as well. Now touch that with a little bit more alizarin, a bit more Indian yellow. And now again, bring it all the way across. I can start to bring it down into the water area. I want it to look like it's at low tide. Drag some of that all the way up into that blue as well. So I'm essentially creating one big graded wash really. So even more alizarin, more raw sienna, quite deep orange now. And I can touch back into that. And now bring it across the watery area. And now taking care to leave a few little white areas behind now, because I want some light coming down. I'll lift the sun out in a minute with a little bit of paper towel. So just leave some of that white behind. So there's a couple of little light hard edges down in the water, and you'll see why in a minute. And I now picked up some blue, some alizarin, and mix that so it's kind of like a purple colour. And while everything's still wet, I can lay some of that into the water area as well. Bring a little bit across the horizon. So I'm creating some reflections and shadows from the clouds that I've not put in yet, if that makes sense. But now get some paper towel and I'll roll it into a little point. Hopefully you can see that on camera. And make sure I follow up from where I've left that white behind and very simply lift out a little bit of paint. And so that's going to be the sun. I don't want it to be a perfect circle. It always looks better if you make it a bit broken around the edges. And now following down from that line straight down, lift out some of the paint, put a light reflection across the water. And again, don't have to be too accurate. Don't make it a perfectly straight line. Be very loose with it so it's moving around. And blot out a few little areas. I'll probably cover a lot of that up actually, but just lift out a few little light areas that I might be able to work with. And just grab that little bead there that's formed. But now the sky area has dried off a tiny bit, so I can start working back in and creating some cloud shapes in there now. And I've squeezed a lot of the water out of the brush. So I'm going back in with some thicker paint with less water. And again, squeeze pretty much all the water out of the brush. And now I can lay back over that sky wash. And so the aim with this is to get a mixture of soft and hard edges. I want quite a lot of dry brush sort of texture going on in the sky. And this painting is based on a painting I did in gouache a few weeks back. You can see it on my Instagram and Facebook. If you want to check that out, then go and have a look at that. And so vary the mixture all the time as I go. So picking up different amounts of blue and alizarin at the moment. And you can see that sky wash has started to dry, especially towards the top. So now I'm getting some nice dry brush areas. It kind of helps the clouds look like they're scudding across the sky. So maybe it's clouds that are broken up by some wind. And so really trying to get a good strong sense of atmosphere. So I've picked up even more blue. Now this is very dry paint now, so it's not going to run and it's not going to form any cauliflowers at all because I'm laying thicker drier paint over the damp on the paper. And now I've got some more alizarin, mix that in. And there's just the tiniest amount of water in the paint, just enough so it goes on and it still flows a little bit. I'll pick up some of that orangey yellow that's there in the palette. Can mix some more alizarin in there. And I want to get some of that orange colour higher up in the sky, so I can drag some of that in. Touch more raw sienna into that. And so getting some nice dry brush sparkle going on in the sky. Can go back into that blue alizarin mix as well and lay some of that in. That just varies the colour slightly as well. So I've got some blues, some purples, some oranges, little hints of brown in there as well. And so more blue, and I'm touching a tiniest little bit of water into it. Just dipping the very tip of the brush into the water just to just to loosen the paint up ever so slightly. And I'm getting some slightly softer cloud shapes the closer I come down to the horizon. Okay, just rinse the brush off now. And I've got some ultramarine and some burnt sienna. I can get a very dark blue now. And I can lay some of that in over the top. Now I'm using the whole of the brush for this. I'll use the tip, I'll use the side of the brush as well, and drag the paint around, really making use of the shape of the brush. And I'm not sure what it looks like on the camera, but it's a very light touch with the brush. I'm not really digging in and scrubbing it around. It's still a light touch, but allowing the brush to do the work. So now mix the paint up a little bit darker, and again, tiniest little bit of water in there, just so it moves around. And get some real dark shapes in there now. And pretty much always working in the same direction. I want it to look like the wind's blowing the cloud across the sky, so keep the brush strokes going in pretty much the same direction. And now as I come down towards the horizon, I can start leveling out, and so getting more horizontal. And also making the shape slightly smaller the closer to the horizon I come. And that should help to add just a little bit of aerial perspective, make it look like the clouds are going off in towards the distance. So horizontal strokes now, but getting slightly smaller, slightly shorter with the brush strokes. And again, squeeze some of the water out of the brush. Don't want it too wet, otherwise then I do run the risk of getting little runbacks and cauliflowers and things like that, and I don't want anything like that happening. So slightly softer shapes, smaller brush strokes all the time as I work my way down. I've got to be careful I don't completely cover it up that area where I blotted out for the sun. I can work around it, I can touch it ever so slightly. I can always lift out a little bit if I need to with some paper towel. But varying that mixture of yellow and alizarin. And bringing these shapes all the way down to the horizon. Still want to get some of that dry brush texture going on, but a lot smaller than it is higher up. And so softer, smaller shapes towards the horizon, bigger, bolder, darker shapes towards the top. And now grab that paper towel again and soften around the edge of the sun. Create the impression, a little bit of light. Got more alizarin, more Indian yellow. I can start bringing this colour across the water now as well. And again, keeping that dry brush sort of feel to everything. Little bits of sparkle. And leaving some of that wash behind that's there, the first wash, and working back into that. It's ever so slightly damp still, but it's dry enough so I can get some of that texture and sparkle. And obviously have to make sure I leave behind the white that I blotted out for the light reflection. Now I can go with some blue and some alizarin as well and get some dark across the foreground area. And varying the angle of the brush strokes as well. Can start adding some slightly diagonal shapes to it. Kind of lead the eye in rather than having it closed off all horizontal all the way across. Vary the shapes that you make. But making sure I leave some sparkly areas behind. When I go back over with a little bit of land and some boat shapes, I want to make sure there's some sparkly areas just behind that will shine through. Now I've got some blue and some more burnt sienna. I'll mix it up quite dark. And I want to add a few more darks into the sky. Get some real bold dark colour in there. Not too much, just enough really to really add a sense of drama. And the darker you go with your darks, it really does make the lights stand out more. But I'll dry that wash off now. Okay, I'm going to work on some distance. I'll get some purple blue sort of distance in there, and I'll just lay some boat shapes and some land over pretty much as a silhouette, so it would be dark all the way across. I just mixed up some blue, some cobalt blue with some alizarin crimson, and give a tiny little mist all the way across the horizon area. And I'll lay in some distance first. So using the rigger brush, bringing the shape of a distant tree line. It can be very simple with this, doesn't have to have any detail in it whatsoever. And you can pretty much always see a church on the horizon when you're in Norfolk. So add a little church shape. Touch a little bit of blue into there as well to vary the mixture. And bring that all the way across. Again, you can keep this very simple, don't need any real detail at all. And bring it all the way over. And I can just touch back in with a little bit of clean water as well to soften all the edges. And I can drag paint across as well with some water. I want it very light below the sun, and you can have it darker either side, but make sure below the sun is light. And tiny little bit of texture in there to suggest some trees or whatever it is off in the distance. I think I'll just darken off that church shape as well, tiny little bit. That's pretty much it for the distance, so I can mix up some dark paint now. So usual mixture for darks, ultramarine and burnt sienna gets quite a nice punchy dark. It's always better than using something like a Payne's grey, I think, to mix your own darks. It looks more natural and it's easier to vary the mixture as well. And so put the land in, and I'm touching back into that distance as well and allowing that to run up and soften. But I can be very loose, very bold with these brush strokes. So dragging the rigger across, using the tip and again the whole of the brush as well, always varying the the strokes by moving the brush around. And also making sure I don't cover up everything from the previous wash. Leave some little areas shining through, and that will just act as little bits of light shining here and there. And now as I come down towards the foreground, I can follow those slightly diagonal marks that I made. And always varying the mixture. I'll just drop a little bit of raw sienna in there now. It changes the colour ever so slightly. It's still a dark, but there's a bit of variation still, nonetheless. And by putting in these little diagonal marks, it will act to lead the eye in towards a boat that I will put in there just to the right hand side of the sun in a little while. And by varying the direction of your brush strokes, it just adds more interest as well. So I have the majority of it going horizontally, but then having a few diagonals in there just to mix it up. I can put a few in just vertically there, very roughly, and dragging tiny little bits of paint all the way across as well. Like I said before at the start, I want this to look like it's low tide, so tiny little bit of water. And in Norfolk there, the tide goes all the way out and just leaves mud essentially. Can I mix up even more dark? I can get this a tiny little bit darker now, so pretty much as dark as I can go. And I'll bring in some masts. So very quickly with the rigger. And add a few little support beams or whatever it is on the boats. There's no real boat shapes there. It's just some vertical marks really. And I'll go into some slightly lighter paint and suggest a few more going off into the distance. And I'll start working on this boat. It's pretty much the only boat shape that's going to be in the whole painting. But I think by having one essentially and then loads of masts, it really tells a story. You know that you're looking at boats, so you don't have to overdo it by putting 100 boat shapes in there. And even this one boat shape, I'm treating it extremely simple. So very simply bringing down a silhouette of a boat, and I'll grab some of that blue grey that's there in the palette, and I'll put in a reflection of some of these masts as well. You can barely see what's going on there, but still just drag a little bit of paint down. And I'll add the reflection of this boat as well. Might as well put it in straight away. So basically mirroring the shape above. It doesn't have to be too accurate. And I'll put the reflection in of the mast before I've painted it on the boat. So I'll have to take a bit of care when I add that mast to make sure I line it up in the right place. But I might as well drag that down while I've got the colour in my brush. So back into the dark paint, and I can put a few masts in over on the right hand side as well. So same sort of thing, very quickly, just dragging the brush down. Don't worry about being too accurate. I think in a way, the looser you are, the quicker you work doing this kind of thing. It adds a certain energy to the painting. So just be quick, be loose, make a decision and just go for it. Now back into that reflection colour, and treat the reflections the same as you did above, so you can be very loose, very quick with it. Don't have to be too accurate again. And really simply just bring those shapes down as well, so mirror them into the water. I can add a few little diagonal support beams in there as well. Okay, just add the mast on this boat and take care, make sure I line it up with where I've already put that reflection in. A very simple little broken line, bring that up. And now I think I need a little bit more texture across the foreground. So mix up some more dark paint. I've switched to a slightly larger brush as well, so I can get that in quicker. So some more strong darks across the foreground. Now just laying that in very bold, very quickly, so I still want the dry brush texture. And so really closing off around the bottom of the painting there, really framing that boat, which I suppose is the main focal point. And I can scratch out a couple of little highlights as well with a plastic card, breaking the shapes up and adding a sense that maybe there's some light catching a few little rocks or something there. And again, break up this shape on the right hand side. But that's pretty much all you need to do. Don't have to go overboard with this. I don't need to scrape in 100 little shapes, but just a couple of little marks. I think that's enough pretty much. Okay, I've dried the painting, it's finished, so I'll take the tape off so you can have a little look with the white around the outside. Now it's a very simple way of painting, getting plenty of atmosphere, a good mixture of soft and hard edges, not really painting any objects in there at all really. It's one boat shape, everything else is very vague, but it still tells a story. There's a lot of light, a lot of atmosphere, a nice sort of sunset scene without it being too cheesy. Give it a go, let me know how you get on, and like I said, this is the final video of the year, so I'd like to wish everybody a happy new year, and hope you all do lots of amazing paintings in 2025. And so let me know if you've got any suggestions, anything like that, and I'll see you in the next video. So have a great year, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers everybody.